July 12, 1990, and Interstate 75 stretched through central Florida like an endless ribbon of asphalt, connecting Tampa to Miami through miles of pine forests, cattle ranches, and small towns that most travelers never stop to notice. The summer heat shimmered off the highway, creating mirages in the distance, and rest stops dotted the route, offering weary travelers brief respites from the relentless Florida sun that turned car interiors into ovens within minutes. The Morrison family was traveling south that Thursday afternoon, heading from their home in Columbus, Ohio, to Fort Lauderdale for a long-planned beach vacation that 16-year-old daughter Ashley had been excited about for months. Robert Morrison was 42 years old, a high school math teacher with graying temples and reading glasses he constantly lost, driving their burgundy 1988 Honda Accord loaded with luggage and beach equipment. His wife Patricia was 39, a nurse at Columbus General Hospital with shoulder-length brown hair and a habit of organizing everything down to the smallest detail, and she sat in the passenger seat with a road atlas open on her lap. Ashley Morrison sat in the back seat wearing headphones connected to her Walkman, listening to Madonna and staring out the window at the passing Florida landscape, her blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail and excitement visible on her young face. They'd left Ohio 3 days earlier, taking their time and stopping at tourist attractions along the way, visiting Mammoth Cave in Kentucky and staying overnight in Atlanta before continuing into Florida on Thursday morning. The plan was to reach Fort Lauderdale by evening, check into their beachfront hotel, and spend the next week swimming and relaxing and celebrating Ashley's upcoming 17th birthday on July 15th. At 3:47 p.m., Robert pulled into a rest stop near the town of Wildwood, approximately 70 miles north of Tampa, because Patricia needed to use the bathroom, and they all wanted to stretch their legs. The rest stop was moderately busy with maybe 15 other vehicles in the parking lot, families with children and truckers taking breaks, and retirees driving motorhomes south for the summer despite the oppressive heat. Security cameras at the rest stop entrance captured the Morrisons' burgundy Honda Accord pulling into a parking space at 3:49 p.m., and all 3 family members were visible exiting the vehicle and walking toward the facilities. Robert locked the car using his key fob, Patricia carried her purse, and Ashley had her Walkman still playing music as they walked together across the parking lot toward the main building that housed restrooms and vending machines. The family entered the rest stop building at 3:51 p.m., captured clearly on the entrance camera, Robert holding the door for Patricia and Ashley, and that footage would become the last confirmed sighting of the Morrison family alive. Inside the building, Patricia and Ashley went to the women's restroom, while Robert used the men's room, and several witnesses later confirmed seeing all 3 Morrison family members inside the facility between 3:51 and 4 p.m. A truck driver named Carl Jensen remembered seeing Robert at the vending machines buying sodas, and a mother from Tennessee recalled Ashley washing her hands at the sink and humming along to whatever music was playing in her headphones. But when Florida Highway Patrol reviewed the security footage later, something impossible appeared on the recordings that would launch one of the state's most baffling missing persons investigations. The cameras showed the Morrison family entering the building at 3:51 p.m., but no footage ever showed them leaving, despite cameras covering every exit and the parking lot and running continuously without malfunction. At 6:30 p.m. that evening, a rest stop attendant named Maria Gonzalez noticed the burgundy Honda Accord still parked in the same spot it had occupied since before 4 p.m., and she thought it odd that a car would sit that long. Maria checked the building to see if anyone appeared sick or needed help, but the restrooms and common areas were empty, and she walked outside to check if the vehicle's occupants had returned but were just sitting in the car. The Honda was empty and locked, with luggage visible in the trunk through the rear window and beach toys on the back seat, but no sign of the family who'd been driving it just hours earlier. In less than 10 minutes inside a public rest stop with security cameras and multiple witnesses, Robert Morrison, Patricia Morrison, and their 16-year-old daughter Ashley vanished completely without anyone seeing them leave or hearing them call for help. If this mystery has you captivated, make sure you're subscribed for more unsolved cases. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your theories about what happened to the Morrison family. Now let's dive into the investigation. Maria called the Florida Highway Patrol at 6:45 p.m. to report the abandoned vehicle, and Trooper James Walsh arrived at the rest stop within 20 minutes to investigate what initially seemed like a routine abandoned car situation. Walsh ran the Ohio license plates and discovered the vehicle belonged to Robert Morrison from Columbus, with no outstanding warrants or issues, and he tried calling the emergency contact number listed, but reached only an answering machine. He checked inside the rest stop building and questioned the attendants, asking if anyone had seen the family that owned the Burgundy Accord, and that's when the situation transformed from routine to deeply concerning. "I saw them come in around 4 p.m., Maria told Trooper Walsh. "The father bought sodas from the vending machine. The mother and daughter were in the restroom. But I never saw them leave, and their car's been sitting there for over 2 hours." Walsh immediately called for backup and requested that security footage be preserved, because a family of 3 doesn't simply vanish from a busy rest stop in broad daylight, and his instincts told him something was very wrong. By 8 p.m., the rest stop had been transformed into an active crime scene, with Florida Highway Patrol and local sheriff's deputies interviewing every person present and reviewing security camera footage that revealed an impossible scenario. The cameras showed the Morrison family entering through the main entrance at 3:51 p.m. with crystal clarity. Robert in a blue polo shirt and khaki shorts, Patricia in a yellow sundress, and Ashley in jean shorts and a white tank top. But despite cameras positioned at both the front entrance and the rear emergency exit, and additional cameras covering the parking lot from multiple angles, no footage showed the family leaving the building at any point. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Sumter County Sheriff's Office arrived at 8:30 p.m. and immediately reviewed the footage herself, certain there must be an explanation. But after watching hours of recordings, she found none. "This doesn't make sense," Martinez told her team. 3 people enter a building with 2 exits, both monitored by cameras that never stopped recording, and those 3 people never come out. Where did they go? The rest stop building was thoroughly searched from top to bottom, with officers checking storage rooms and utility closets and even the ceiling crawl spaces, but they found no trace of the Morrison family anywhere. Tracking dogs were brought in and given scent samples from clothing found in the Morrisons' Honda, and the dogs tracked to the building entrance, through the main corridor, and then became confused and agitated near the restrooms. The dogs couldn't establish a clear trail leading out of the building in any direction, as if the scent simply ended inside the facility, and handlers had never encountered this kind of behavior from their animals on what should have been a straightforward tracking exercise. Every person who'd been at the rest stop between 3:30 and 6:30 p.m. was identified through license plate records and credit card transactions, and deputies began the massive task of interviewing dozens of potential witnesses. Carl Jensen, the truck driver who'd seen Robert at the vending machines, was interviewed extensively, and he described a completely normal interaction where Robert had fed dollar bills into the machine and collected 3 Coca-Colas. He seemed fine, normal family on vacation, nothing weird about him at all, Carl told investigators. He smiled at me when the machine ate one of his dollars, made a joke about highway robbery, then got his sodas and walked toward the restrooms. The woman from Tennessee who'd seen Ashley in the bathroom remembered the teenager seemed happy and was singing quietly to herself, and she'd left the restroom before Ashley finished washing her hands. She was a pretty girl, looked like a typical teenager on summer vacation. There was nothing that seemed off or concerning, the woman explained. I dried my hands and left, and the girl was still standing at the sink. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing various members of the Morrison family inside the building between 3:51 and approximately 4:05 p.m., but nobody could remember seeing all 3 together after they'd initially entered. Detective Martinez focused on the time window between 4:05 p.m., when the last witness reported seeing Ashley, and 6:30 p.m., when the rest stop attendant noticed the abandoned car, trying to understand what had happened during those crucial hours. The rest stop had 2 restrooms, a small convenience area with vending machines and a covered outdoor picnic area accessible through a side door, and all areas were checked repeatedly without finding any evidence. Crime scene technicians processed the Morrisons' Honda thoroughly, checking for signs of struggle or forced entry, but the vehicle was clean and undisturbed with all the family's belongings neatly packed exactly as you'd expect from people on vacation. Patricia's purse was missing, which made sense because witnesses had seen her carrying it into the building, but Robert's wallet was found in the car's console, which was unusual because most people carry their wallets with them. Ashley's overnight bag was open on the back seat with her diary visible on top, and when investigators read the recent entries looking for clues, they found only typical teenage concerns about boys and friends and excitement about the beach vacation. There was no indication of family trouble, no mentions of arguments or plans to run away. Nothing that suggested the Morrisons were anything other than a normal, happy family looking forward to their Florida vacation. The FBI was contacted at 10 p.m. after it became clear this wasn't a simple case of people wandering off or having car trouble, and agents arrived from the Tampa field office to assist with what was now being treated as a potential abduction. Agent Michael Torres reviewed all the evidence and witness statements, and he kept returning to the security footage that showed a family entering a building and then simply ceasing to exist without any logical explanation. There are only a few possibilities here, Torres told the assembled law enforcement team. Either the cameras malfunctioned during a critical window, or there's an exit we haven't found, or something happened inside that building that we're not seeing. Technicians verified that all cameras had functioned properly throughout the entire day with no gaps in recording, and structural engineers were brought in to examine the building for hidden passages or spaces where people could be concealed. The building had been constructed in 1985 as a standard Florida rest stop facility, with no unusual architectural features, and engineers found no hidden rooms or passages, or any way for 3 people to exit without being captured on camera. By midnight, the rest stop remained closed as an active crime scene, and the parking lot was illuminated by portable lights, while dozens of law enforcement personnel tried to solve a mystery that defied all logical explanation. Robert Morrison's brother Daniel in Columbus had been contacted and informed that his brother's family was missing, and he immediately began driving to Florida while calling other family members with the devastating news. By Friday morning, the Morrison family's disappearance was national news, with television networks broadcasting the security footage of the family entering the rest stop and then seemingly vanishing into thin air from a building they never left. The story captured public imagination because of its impossible nature, and theories ranged from logical explanations involving overlooked exits to wild speculation about everything from alien abduction to government conspiracies and supernatural phenomena. The rest stop remained closed for 3 days while FBI forensic teams processed every inch of the facility, taking fingerprints and collecting trace evidence, and searching for any clue that might explain how 3 people had disappeared. They found the Morrison family's fingerprints exactly where you'd expect them: on the vending machines Robert had used, on the bathroom door handles, on the sink fixtures where Ashley had washed her hands, but no prints leading to any exit. Luminol testing revealed no blood evidence anywhere in the facility, suggesting the family hadn't been attacked or injured inside the building, and cadaver dogs showed no interest in any areas indicating no bodies were hidden on the premises. Daniel Morrison arrived in Florida on Friday afternoon and stood in the rest stop parking lot staring at his brother's Honda Accord with incomprehension spreading across his face, unable to process how an entire family could vanish. Robert was the most careful, responsible person I knew, Daniel told Detective Martinez. He wouldn't just abandon his car and disappear. Something terrible happened here and I need you to find them. Patricia Morrison's sister Helen flew in from Seattle and provided investigators with detailed information about Patricia's habits and personality, emphasizing that her sister would never voluntarily disappear or put her daughter in danger under any circumstances. Ashley's friends from Columbus were interviewed by phone, and they all described a normal teenager excited about her beach vacation, with no indication she was unhappy at home or planning to run away or involved with anyone concerning. The FBI established a tip hotline, and within 48 hours received over 3,000 calls from people reporting sightings of the Morrison family in locations across Florida and neighboring states, and every lead was investigated. A gas station attendant in Ocala reported selling snacks to a family, matching the Morrison description around 5 p.m. Thursday. But security footage showed the family was different people who only superficially resembled the missing Ohioans. A motel clerk in Tampa claimed the Morrisons had checked in Thursday evening using cash, but when agents arrived they found the family was from Michigan and had been there for 3 days with documented proof. Dozens of reported sightings collapsed under investigation, revealing well-meaning but mistaken witnesses who wanted to help, but had seen different families or misremembered details, or were simply attention-seeking. The burgundy Honda Accord was transported to an FBI facility for comprehensive forensic analysis, and technicians spent days examining every fiber and hair and fingerprint looking for evidence that someone else had been near or inside the vehicle. They found nothing unusual. The family's fingerprints and DNA, beach sand from their stop in Georgia, fast food receipts from their journey south, and all the normal detritus of a family road trip with no signs of foul play. Detective Martinez became obsessed with the building's architecture and spent hours studying blueprints and construction documents, convinced there had to be a passage or exit that wasn't on the official plans. She brought in contractors who'd worked on the original 1985 construction and on subsequent renovations, asking if any hidden spaces or forgotten doorways existed, but everyone insisted the building was exactly as the blueprints showed. The theory that the family had been abducted by someone waiting inside the rest stop was explored extensively, with investigators checking backgrounds of every rest stop employee and anyone who'd been present that Thursday afternoon. Every person was accounted for and cleared, with alibis and no connections to the Morrison family, and no criminal histories suggesting capability for abducting 3 people simultaneously without anyone noticing. Agent Torres developed a theory that the family had been lured or coerced outside through the emergency exit during a brief window when the camera angle was obstructed, but repeated reviews of the footage showed no such obstruction occurred. The emergency exit was alarmed and logs showed it hadn't been opened that entire day, and even if it had been used, the parking lot cameras would have captured anyone exiting through that door. By August, the case had generated international attention with media from around the world covering the baffling disappearance, and the rest stop became an unofficial tourist attraction, with curiosity seekers visiting the site. The Morrison family's story was featured on Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted, generating thousands of additional tips that all led nowhere, and the family remained missing without a single credible clue about what had happened. Daniel Morrison offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to his brother's family, and the reward money attracted con artists and psychics, and people claiming to have visions, none of whom provided anything useful. One psychic insisted the family was being held in an underground bunker near the Everglades. Another claimed they'd been taken aboard a boat and were somewhere in the Caribbean, and a third said they were dead and buried in the forest. Detective Martinez followed up on even the most absurd tips because she couldn't bear the thought of dismissing something that might be legitimate, but every investigation ended in frustration and wasted resources. By September, when school would have started and Ashley would have begun her junior year, the case remained completely unsolved, with no physical evidence, no witnesses, and no explanation for how 3 people had entered a building and never emerged. The 1990s brought periodic renewed interest in the Morrison case whenever similar disappearances occurred, or when anniversary coverage reminded the public of the family that had vanished from a Florida rest stop. The burgundy Honda Accord was eventually released to Daniel Morrison, who couldn't bring himself to drive it or sell it, so it sat in a storage unit in Columbus like a time capsule containing the last traces of his brother's family. Detective Martinez continued working the case long after it was officially designated cold, spending her own time reviewing evidence and following up on tips that occasionally trickled in even years after the disappearance. She retired from the Sumter County Sheriff's Office in 2003, but kept copies of the Morrison file in her home office, and she told her husband that solving this case had become her life's obsession that she couldn't abandon. The rest stop underwent renovations in 1995, and during construction, workers searched every wall cavity and underground space, hoping to find remains or evidence, but they discovered nothing related to the missing family. Security systems were upgraded with additional cameras and better coverage, and a memorial plaque was installed near the entrance reading, "In memory of the Morrison family, Robert, Patricia, and Ashley, missing since July 12, 1990. Daniel Morrison spent years investigating on his own, hiring private detectives and traveling across Florida, interviewing witnesses and checking hospitals and morgues, but his efforts produced no new information. He established a foundation to help families of missing persons and became an advocate for better rest stop security, channeling his grief into action because sitting idle made the pain unbearable. Helen Morrison, Patricia's sister, held out hope that her sister and niece were being held somewhere against their will and might someday escape or be rescued, because accepting they were dead meant giving up entirely. Ashley's high school graduating class in 1992 left an empty chair for her during the ceremony, and her classmates organized annual vigils on July 12th, hoping that publicity might generate new leads. The FBI periodically reviewed the case using advancing technology to enhance security footage and analyze evidence with methods that hadn't existed in 1990, but the results were consistently disappointing. In 2001, remains were discovered in a wooded area about 30 miles from the Wildwood rest stop, and Daniel received the call that made him both hope and dread that they'd finally found his brother's family. Forensic analysis determined the remains belonged to two unrelated individuals who'd been dead since the 1970s, having nothing to do with the Morrison case, and Daniel experienced the crushing cycle of hope and devastation that had become sickeningly familiar. New theories emerged over the years as cultural obsessions shifted. In the late 90s, people focused on trafficking and organized crime. In the 2000s, terrorism became a proposed explanation, and by the 2010s, some suggested elaborate murder-for-hire scenarios. None of these theories could be substantiated with evidence, and Detective Martinez believed the truth was probably simpler than the elaborate explanations people proposed, though she couldn't identify what that simple truth might be. True crime internet communities became fascinated with the Morrison case in the 2000s, analyzing the security footage frame by frame and proposing theories about camera blind spots and optical illusions and timestamps. Some amateur investigators claimed to see shadowy figures in the background of the footage, while others insisted the family had been digitally edited out of later frames, but professional analysis dismissed these claims as pareidolia and conspiracy thinking. The case was featured on dozens of podcasts and YouTube channels, each one promising new insights or overlooked details, but none of them could answer the fundamental question of where three people had gone after entering a building. In 2015, advanced facial recognition technology was used to search social media and public databases for any sign of Ashley Morrison, who would now be 41 years old, but no matches were found anywhere. DNA samples from Patricia's hairbrush and Robert's electric razor were preserved and entered into national missing persons databases, creating profiles that could be compared against unidentified remains discovered anywhere in the country. But no matches ever emerged from those databases, suggesting either the Morrison family was still alive somewhere or their remains had never been discovered and properly processed. Daniel Morrison died in 2018 at age 72 from a heart attack, and his obituary stated he was survived by his missing brother Robert and family, whose disappearance he'd never stopped investigating despite 3 decades without answers. Helen Morrison continued the foundation work her brother-in-law had started, and she kept age progression photos of Patricia and Ashley updated every few years, showing what they might look like as they aged. The photos showed Patricia in her 60s now, gray-haired and weathered, and Ashley as a middle-aged woman who might have children of her own, faces that existed only in computer-generated images based on algorithms and hope. The Wildwood rest stop still operates today with modern facilities, and while most travelers stop without knowing its history, those familiar with the Morrison case report an unsettling feeling when using the restrooms or walking through the building. Staff members over the years have reported strange occurrences: unexplained sounds in empty restrooms, vending machines dispensing items without money being inserted, and a persistent feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Most dismiss these reports as imagination influenced by knowledge of the disappearance, but enough incidents have been documented that the rest stop has gained a reputation among truck drivers and frequent I-75 travelers as haunted or cursed. By 2024, the Morrison family's disappearance has become one of America's most baffling unsolved mysteries, discussed in criminology courses and featured in documentaries exploring cases that defy conventional investigation and logical explanation. The security footage of the family entering the rest stop building has been viewed millions of times online, analyzed by professional investigators and amateur sleuths alike, and it remains the most tangible evidence of what happened that July afternoon. Robert would be 76 now, Patricia would be 73, and Ashley would be 50 years old. Ages that exist only in theoretical projections because nobody knows if the Morrison family is alive or dead, or what became of them. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement maintains the case in their cold case unit, and it's reviewed periodically whenever new investigative techniques become available or when similar disappearances occur that might be connected. Detective Amanda Chen was assigned to review the Morrison case in 2023 as part of a comprehensive cold case initiative, and she spent 6 months examining every piece of evidence with modern forensic tools and investigative databases. "I've worked missing persons cases for 15 years and I've never encountered anything like this," Chen told her supervisor. "The evidence is impossible. 3 people entered a building and the building swallowed them. There's no other way to describe it." The rest stop building itself has been examined so many times by so many different experts that its structural integrity is probably better documented than any other rest stop in America, and no hidden spaces have ever been found. Ground-penetrating radar was used in 2020 to search for underground tunnels or burial sites beneath the facility and surrounding area, but the scans revealed only normal utility lines and soil composition with no anomalies. Helen Morrison, now in her 80s and in declining health, still keeps age progression photos displayed in her Seattle home, and she checks missing persons databases weekly despite knowing the statistical likelihood of finding answers after 34 years. "I need to know what happened before I die," Helen told a reporter in 2023. "Not knowing is a torture that never ends. Every day for 34 years I've wondered if today will be the day someone calls with answers." The theories that have emerged over the decades range from plausible to fantastical. Coordinated abduction by multiple perpetrators, witness protection relocation, voluntary disappearance to escape death or danger, or even more outlandish explanations involving parallel dimensions and temporal anomalies. Law enforcement focuses on the logical possibilities that the family was somehow coerced or lured from the building during a brief window, that they were victims of a highly organized crime, or that they met with foul play from someone who understood how to avoid cameras. But none of these theories can explain the physical evidence, or rather the complete absence of physical evidence, because the Morrison family left no trace beyond their fingerprints on bathroom fixtures and vending machines. The case has inspired numerous fictional works, including novels and movies loosely based on the disappearance, and the Wildwood Rest Stop has become embedded in American folklore, alongside other mysterious vanishings that defy explanation. Some investigators have theorized that someone working at the rest stop was involved and helped facilitate the disappearance, but exhaustive background checks on every employee from 1990 revealed no suspicious connections or criminal histories. Others have suggested the family staged their own disappearance for reasons unknown, but financial records showed no money problems, family interviews revealed no marital issues, and there was absolutely no motive for a happy family to vanish voluntarily. The burgundy Honda Accord that sat in storage for years was eventually donated to a museum dedicated to unsolved mysteries, where it's displayed with informational plaques explaining the Morrison case to visitors who come to see the vehicle. Ashley Morrison's classmates, who are now in their 50s, still hold annual memorial gatherings on July 12th, refusing to let their friend be forgotten, even though most have accepted she's probably been dead for decades. The security footage from that day has been enhanced and analyzed with every technological advancement from the 1990s through the 2020s, using AI and machine learning to search for details human eyes might miss, but nothing new has ever emerged. Agent Michael Torres, now retired from the FBI, occasionally gives interviews about the Morrison case and admits it remains the one investigation that haunts him most, because every logical avenue led nowhere. "In 30 years with the Bureau, I worked hundreds of cases and most of them made sense eventually, even if we couldn't solve them," Torres explained in a 2022 podcast. But the Morrison family breaks every rule, violates every pattern, and offers no rational explanation. The emergency exit theory that someone propped open the alarm door has been tested repeatedly, and modern analysis confirms the alarm system was functioning properly that day and would have triggered if the door had been opened. The possibility that the family was smuggled out in a vehicle like a laundry truck or delivery van was investigated thoroughly, but rest stop records showed no such vehicles present during the critical time window. Every possible scenario has been examined and re-examined, and each one fails to account for some aspect of the evidence or creates new impossibilities that can't be resolved. Helen Morrison has stated in her will that when she dies, any remaining foundation money should continue funding investigations into her sister's disappearance, ensuring the search continues even after all family members are gone. The Florida Rest Stop system has implemented numerous security improvements as a direct result of the Morrison case, including better camera coverage, increased staffing, and panic buttons in restrooms, changes that have probably prevented other tragedies. But these improvements can't help the Morrison family or answer the questions that have haunted investigators for over 3 decades. Where did they go, who took them, and why has absolutely no evidence ever emerged? As of today, 34 years after Robert, Patricia, and Ashley Morrison walked into a Wildwood Rest Stop building, their fate remains completely unknown, and their case remains one of the most frustrating, unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. The security footage continues to exist as silent testimony to the impossible. A family entering a building in broad daylight, surrounded by witnesses and cameras, and then ceasing to exist without leaving the building or providing any clue about what happened. Somewhere, someone knows what happened on Interstate 75 that July afternoon in 1990. Whether they were directly involved or witnessed something they never reported or discovered information they kept hidden. Until that person comes forward or until physical evidence emerges that can finally explain the unexplainable, the Morrison family remains missing, their case unsolved, and their disappearance stands as a reminder that some mysteries resist all attempts at solution. And at a rest stop in Wildwood, Florida, where thousands of travelers stop each week to use the facilities and stretch their legs, a small memorial plaque remains the only acknowledgement that 3 people once entered that building and were never seen again.